Welcome to the Prosperity Practice. The Prosperity Practice. Our personal take on what it takes. Push, challenge, light the fire. Do not chase prosperity. Rather, be prosperous. Welcome to the Prosperity Practice with your host, Brandon Hanley.
Looks like we made it.
Ready to go.
So much, right? Like, we haven't even gotten started yet. So much. So let's just do it. Let's just jump into it a little bit, guys. Today I'm on with Paresh Shah, who is from Lifters. I am a lifter.com. A little bit about Paresh. I'm not going to go too deep into it, but Paresh is he's got a Harvard MBA. He's a business professor, and comes from like this very I'm just going to call it square background, right? But from your family's from India. You grew up in the States. You had this very traditional path. And at some point, you broke from this traditional business mentality only with, we'll call it linear space, right, where everything's very linear and direct, into this very encompassing, and I think that you talk about it quite a bit, human way about going about things through being multidimensional, right? I mean, and that's really what you talk about, is like being multidimensional. And I think that you said one of the things that you mentioned that I keyed in on was being, humans are, where is this thing? I know you talk about intersection
beings.
I know you talk about intersection beings, but you said something else, and I jotted it down. I took so many notes and just talking about you. I was very excited. Like I said, intersection beings was one, but like being depth. Human beings like being very good at finding depth, right? And when we come at life from a linear fashion, we don't see the curves. We don't see around the curves. We don't see. We can't see behind us. We don't look behind. Oftentimes, when we look behind us, we do it in a linear fashion, and we don't do it in a spherical sense.
That's a great way of putting it, Brandon. It's a great way. Yeah. In fact, one of the words that came through. And when we see things linearly, which has its place, we don't even see the ability to tesseract. Tesseracting, sort of even beyond the curved
right.
concept, is often fantastical. Oh, you're dreaming that such and such could happen in such a non-ordinary, non-logical sense. So yeah, I think it's a nice way of saying it. Sort of the linear way of thinking, very logical, practical, versus that more rounded, spherical, or amorphous space even, because amorphous is really a way we see it. Often when you have, a bunch of blobs that don't seem to have any shape or structure, upon deeper contemplation, patience, wisdom, there's a beauty in it that actually does emerge, that actually does have some order to it, actually has beautiful order.
Yes. There's been, some research done. If you take a look at like chaos and like just diagrams, that it eventually creates a beautiful pattern. Right. And so we're talking about all this, but, Paresh brings this background and Paresh, you align it with this wisdom science. I think you're calling it. I love that you're calling it wisdom science. You're taking your yoga practice, and I believe, I'm sure you're taking, some of your heritage, and you're finding it to be true, right? Like all these things, I'm sure as you grew up, like I did, you're like, well, that's woo-woo, that's nonsensical. But you're finding it now to be true. And the beauty about where you are today in finding it to be true in your life and being able to bring it with that business background to the world, the science is proving it out now too. And how exciting is that to be able to present that?
It's really exciting. It's
right?
Very exciting.
Yeah.
It's because, a lot of us, on the sort of leading edge, cutting edge, woo-woo edge, or curve,
sure.
your way of seeing things. Often you feel you're like way out there on a limb, speaking of some of these things that are esoteric or just don't fit within the sort of 3D matrix way of being. And now it's really exciting. I mean, every day I get something on my Facebook that's like, oh yeah, there's some science to back that up. So I'm not out there.
So great, right?
Hanging, saying, really, it works this way.
Right.
Now you can point to some legitimate authority and say, yeah, in fact, quantum entanglement is a thing.
Right.
So therefore, telepathy, by conclusion, can be a thing, and things like that. So at least I feel better about some of the woo-woo stuff. Now, there's definitely woo-woo stuff when you're playing this game.
Sure.
Logical to amorphous, where sometimes we go really woo-woo, and my kids, always remind me of those moments when we were a little too woo-woo, and
Well, give me an example of a too woo-woo. I'm just curious. What's too woo-woo?
Of a too woo-woo.
Then we'll just make that a little skit somewhere too. Woo-woo.
That'd be that good SNL skit, right? Land shark, too woo-woo. For instance, we went to Mount Shasta as a family.
Gorgeous area.
Earlier this year. It's a vortex of very special energy. There's an amazing community there. And I had been there before with a particular spiritual teacher, and we had some really woo-woo experiences out there. So we went this time, and I was all excited. I was like, kids, this is a vortex, and it's going to be cool. And there's these aliens that live in the mountain, and going out there. And so we hired a guide, and there's all kinds of guides that you can hire. And I got the most woo-woo one that the internet suggested to me. And while there was some truth to her sharing, as she took us about, and while there was definitely energy that we felt, and definitely out of the ordinary experiences we had, some of the things she channeled were our kids and I were like, no, it was kind of like Maxwell Smart. It was kind of like, so what I'm feeling from the spirit behind you, Brandon, is that your childhood was really one that was tumultuous. And, it's kind of like,
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, and right. So
good on the yes and there.
You like that? So one of the things that this podcast does, right, in the prosperity practice is, we take some of the, historically known to be woo-woo stuff, and we focus really on, being intentional and focusing on what you want out of life, right, and believing that it's possible. Yeah. Right? How absurd is that? But how absurd is that? But the thing is that I think that the business world has always done this, right? By you create a plan, you get clarity, you create a picture, you're visioning, right? Like all these things is exactly what business has been doing, except for some people just don't think that way. Right. And that's where these woo-woo people come in like, no, you just gotta feel it. Go feel good. And everything will come with that. And which is okay, but there's got to be some middle line where everybody's talking the same language. And I think that that's what you're bringing.
Yeah, it's really fun to be able to be at the intersection of these great worlds. I mean, I love business. I'm a business geek. It's my sport. I love strategy and marketing and, finding blue ocean that you can create new things in. And then there's this other world. I think part of what might reconcile what you're speaking to is, for instance, I had the honor of working with Michael Porter, who's, probably, one of the gods of business strategy of the past, 30, 40 years. And I worked in his firm, and we did a lot of strategy for our clients, with our clients. And I think what's different in these two worlds, which are now merging, similar as you point out, is we would make a strategic plan in the following way. We would, create, a vision, a mission, a purpose, and say, well, this is where we want to be, and then we would kind of move from point A towards a goal in, sort of incremental milestone steps.
Right.
There was a lot of from here to there energy, from where we are now to 5-year plan, 3-year plan. So the energetic aspect of it was, we are here and we need to go to that destination, which is, to be created, to happen in the future.
Right.
And that's how our sort of logical, linear way of doing, strategic planning and pro formas and stuff works, and that makes sense. What's exciting about this metaphysical world is the similarity of that, yet what we find, what we teach, what we hear from truth, wisdom, is take yourself there. Like when we do the lifter work, it's about redefining victory and creating a vision of what that is that you're embodying, that you're co-creating with your team, and really bringing your beingness into that moment.
Right.
Now, as if now, rather than in future. And so we really, through our more than a feeling practice, one of the mind shifts of lifter leadership, we go, how do we get into the more than a feeling of this? How do we feel what it feels like to have achieved that thing that was, quote, out there? What does it smell like to be in that experience? What does it feel like? What do you see around you? Oh, we see our customers are, really excited about interacting with this new, product or service or experience.
Right.
What are people saying? What are you hearing?
Right.
And in some ways it's very different, because in the metaphysical manifestation of prosperity, whether it be in business or in your personal life, it's really about being in the now. And I almost am hesitant to say the now as if, because even the as if shouldn't be there. It's now. It's here. It's now. And this is what it feels like. And that
working off of the eternal now.
Exactly. And then that feeling of it, hey, it's here. It's now. It's just visible. Then, emanates out and just, reverbs out into the universe. And, one of my teachers said, pretty much what does the universe do? It multiplies. It multiplies our thoughts, our words, and our feelings and our actions. And so I think that's what's different about that linear strategic process that we lead clients to, and then this other one. And what we're finding is many of our clients, actually, to my surprise, Brandon, I get a little nervous sometimes about getting my clients to be too woo-woo out there. Oh, let's come up with our plan and what's our positioning and what's our competitive advantage going to be, et cetera. And then I'll say, let's kind of play around with this and, see what does it feel like? And then we'll have someone going, Paresh, it's like a vision board. I vision boarded 3 years ago and that thing manifested. And, and you're finding that your clients are actually giving you permission to be way more woo-woo than, we ourselves would.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think that we're at a beautiful intersection, right? We are at a beautiful intersection of science, of your lifting practice, of you. I mean, I think you'd mentioned before, like, you and I were talking, and you'd mentioned it took you years to bring up love to your clients or in the conversation.
It took me 3 years. When I knew, look, it's about love. That's what all of the great truth teachers of every faith, of every religion, of every, any poet, anyone who's had any clue. And yet that word was in my own censored left brain mind, not permitted or permissible in a boardroom. And
no, they're going to show you the door if you bring up love. We should be leading with love, Paresh, and they should be like, we're going to be leading you to the door, Paresh.
But now it's actually very welcome, because people understand love. What are some derivatives of love? Compassion and empathy, which are core conversations in every boardroom. Creativity, comes from love. You can't be creative if you're in a down state.
No.
Caring, cooperation is all about love. And so love has its place finally in
Well, I love it. I love it. And, when we started this conversation, as you were, gathering yourself and getting over to the PC, we talked about you waking up and going to the beach in the morning. And I heard another one of your podcasts, not necessarily, one of the things. Let's talk about what we're doing away with as a lifter, and then let me follow up with a couple of things. So, what are some of the first things that you're doing as a lifter when you bring it in there? You do away with which aspects?
What do we do away with? Okay.
And I'll throw the hunting, right, like that into that area.
Exactly. So we're doing away with so many of the shifts. So we're doing away with the command and control way of leading to a cooperative, co-creative way of leading. We're doing away with scarcity. It's like, it's about competition, and I gotta go, take it from the competition and get my share of wallet because there's not enough to go around. We're moving from scarcity to abundance, and there's plenty for everyone. And we're finding more and more organizations are teaming up with people that heretofore they would have deemed competitors or the enemy. We're doing away with focus on transactional interactions, either with employees or with customers, to go, hey, let's see what we can get out of that customer, even if we have, fine print talking at 1,000,000 miles an hour at the end of the conversation to make sure you cover your legal butt. Like getting out of that transactional aspect into service and, really, inspiring and serving our folks. So those are some of the things we're giving up is transactional, power-driven, dominating type of ways of managing and showing up in our workplace. And some of the other things that come associated with that are behaviors like negative speaking, right? Like being mindful of the words that we use and giving up words that, could, either lower the possibilities, make someone feel not included, bring a negative aspect to something that actually has some opportunity in it. So these are some things that we're giving up. And it's okay because there's plenty of good stuff that fills in.
Well, and I love it. I love that, you're going from and again, that's what this podcast is about first and foremost, is getting out of that scarcity mindset, realizing that there's more than enough to go around, right? We've got a whole universe of stuff, and there's plenty, right? That you're going from this power driven, this hunting aspect, and when I go out there and somebody's says, hey, I want you to be a hunter, I'm like, well, I don't want to. And I've said this before, and I think I didn't get some jobs because of it, right? I'm but because
how about eat what you kill? Have you heard that expression?
I have heard that too. Yeah, but I mean, I don't want to. There's no joy in that. I want to go out and have a good relationship. I want to be, and it took me a while to get to be of service too. And I think that you do some work with people to get them from. Because we've been trained to be this way. It's almost like a militant sales force out there, and if we can translate, redirect this energy into a service energy, right? What's that look like to you?
It's so easily transmutable. That's the beauty of it. Easy, let's say in organizations, it's not that easy. At the individual level, there's actually just, not many steps you need to take or many practices that you need to start putting into your way of seeing things that can make that transmutation, because it's all energy, right? That's quantum physics is joining the game, neuroscience is joining the game, spirituality.
I love it, right? Again, it's so awesome right now.
It's so great. It's all coming together. With these things coming together, things like, how you show up at work, for instance, I think one of the things that makes it easier to alchemize this energy or transmute it is if we stop making wrong the way that we have been and the way that we are moving out of, because that actually creates its own set of defensive routines, defensiveness, fear of change, and things like that, which actually slow that evolution down. And so what when we give our keynote talks or we are, doing our training, people are like, oh my God, you know what? How could we possibly have been that way? And, it's so-and-so's fault, fill in the blank, some class of people. And that's not helpful, and it's not very lifter-like anyway. It's simply the next evolution for us as a planet, whether it was appropriate or not. And many of the behaviors obviously are inappropriate and should be dealt with in their own way. Let's not kind of shame the way that the world has been, because it doesn't help. Let's just move on, and let's help bring people forward into this new way of being as a planet, because the whole planet is going through this. It's basically a chiropractic adjustment, and there's pain involved here. And let's have compassion for ourselves, especially, not just others, for ourselves, because we've been trained this way. When I was in business school, Michael Porter, who I mentioned, I mean, he's amazing, and he's evolved in his own thinking over time. He coined competitive advantage, the 5 forces of business, right? Supplier power, customer power, industry rivalry. These are all, very militaristic, power-oriented concepts, and they had their place in our evolution. So, now it's a matter of just this shift. It's kind of like, okay, the internet's here now. Right. Why don't we just use it rather than, we could have done it this other way before? It's like, let's just use what's available now.
I like though, like, what you're saying though, is like, we look at all the ways that we used to be or the ways that we've been, and we chastise ourselves for it. And that's not right. There's no good in that, but what we can do instead is say, hey, all this was necessary to be where I am today, for me to be able to give the best of who I am today. And then recognize, I think that one thing, is that once you realize that this is where you're at, now it's a choice. Exactly.
That's, in fact, the word choice is a great place to stop for a moment here, because, people ask me, Paresh, like, with all this horrible stuff that's going on in the world and all this anger and, political unrest, not just in the United States, but all over the place, and different political leaders, or so-called leaders, coming into office, how can things be getting better? And to some extent, I think what's happening in the world is that all of this upheaval, it's upheaval, and there's a lot of injustice happening as well, is forcing many people to make choices now, when before we may have been complacent and just sort of like in our own little world with our own, petty concerns. And now we're really being forced as individuals to make choices about how we wish to show up in the world. And I don't know, without all of this, strife and tension and drama, whether, people, and especially companies, would be forced to take what we would call a brand stand. It's like, what do I stand for? And what do I not stand for? Yeah. Because before we could kind of like hide in the middle as companies, as individuals, and most importantly within our own mind. Right? We talked about chastising. Even if we put aside chastising other people for their behaviors, etc., and let's put that in its own place. Our own chastising of ourselves is what causes a lot of our own suffering and inhibits our ability to evolve, to higher levels of consciousness as individuals. And so it's really about ourselves first and foremost.
Yeah. Well, look, when we can take the judgment away from ourselves, right? We got to start with ourselves. Yep. Say, I'm not going to judge what I just did there. I'm just going to make the next move. Right. And then kind of eliminating labels, right, on what it is that we just did. And, good or bad type thing. And I always go back to the Shakespeare, nothing's good or bad except for your thinking makes it so, right?
Exactly.
So, but it's funny because you'll catch yourself saying that. And I think that this is like the cognitive leap, right? And I'm curious about you, because you did bring it up on one of your podcasts that you did, going through the transition, right? You called it, what did you call it? I refuse to call it that, though. You called it midlife crisis. I just simply like to call it awakening, because here's why, though. Here's why. Because I think that there's an alternative. Like, there are two ways to.
Arriving in a crazy fun house that was sometimes
It's
a
intense.
house of horrors, a house of mirrors.
100%. So great, though, right? I mean, but the thing for me that was amazing was, I was sober, 100% sober. Right? No drinks, no drugs, and nothing. And my body was in this state for like a week or two. And I looked at my wife, I was like, I don't know what's going on. I was like, I'm sorry. I don't know if it's going to get better before it gets worse. And she was like, what the hell is going on? I'm like, I don't know how to explain it. Right?
I don't know myself.
Right. But in saying all that, see, I think that you have the opportunity to, and I think that you had the advantage of your cultural background to recognize kind of what was happening. Whereas, most Westerners are going to freak out and they got to go get on all the antidepressants. They got to suppress all this because they don't know what to think about it. So walk me through a little bit of that. And I'm not sure that you've done that before somewhere else, but like, I'm just curious because, it's not, I don't think it's a midlife crisis. I think it's, I'll call it awakening to your power, or all these other things, right? So,
sometimes you got to get clobbered to get to the next level. Sometimes you've got to get clobbered.
Mm-hmm.
So you said, maybe it's my background that, facilitated this in somewhat of an easier way. I would argue quite the opposite.
Would you know? Like, I'm curious.
Give me a moment, counselor.
Yeah, give it. Yeah.
So I came here to America when I was 18 months old from India. I was born in Gujarat, in Ahmedabad, where Gandhi actually had his ashram. And so I moved to Washington, D.C., and just
in the ghetto, right? Like in the ghetto. In the ghetto, right? Like,
that's a separate story. Yeah, whole separate story. My dad thought he was got a residency because he did his medical school in India, and he thought he got his residency, and he was coming to America with my mom to go to this great school, Howard. It's the best in the world, Howard.
Yeah.
And to his much surprise, landing at Freedman's Hospital at Howard University in the middle of the racial riots.
Right.
Coming to America. This is not what we expected.
What amazing.
That's a whole separate story. But anyway, we grew up in DC. So I, and as a kid who wants to fit in, I really kind of, saw myself as American. I'm in Washington, D.C., in the United States of America, the greatest country on earth. And just to put an extra accentuation from God on the Americanness of me, guess when my birthday is?
Well, I already know, so I'll let you go ahead and do it. Go ahead.
The 4th of July.
Do it, yes.
I mean, it's the greatest day.
I love it, right? Sure, for sure.
Actually, I didn't even expect this to come up today, but this is my shirt from Hamilton.
Nice.
Just like my country, young, scrappy, and hungry.
For sure.
So anyway, I actually, in my growing up as a kid, and like the only Indian kid, because this is long before we had swarms of IT Indians all over the place. I was the only Indian kid, and so I wanted to be like all my friends. I'm American, and so I saw with those eyes, and I actually rejected a lot of my Indianness. And so the spiritual traditions of my mom and dad, I thought were like, that's just for people who aren't educated or as smart as me. And it's, and so I had a bit of a chip on my shoulder about intelligence and that linear thinking. It's like, you know what? We don't need all that spiritual stuff if you've got this.
Right.
And I was well rewarded for that growing up. And, we respond to our rewards and punishments and stuff. And so, so I was really, I consider myself like I'll take my friends down and say, dude, I'm more American than you. I grew up in
Right.
DC. And so it was only until later that the reconnection with the wisdom of the East and my overcoming my own internal judgments of it or labeling of it, only then did it sort of accelerate, in a really fun way.
Right.
But before then, my friends used to make fun of me because, they'd like, point to a goddess and I'd be like, is that Saraswati or is that Lakshmi? And they'd be like, dude, it's Ganesh. Or,
Duh. Dude, so when I say that, when I say that it helped facilitate it again, like, so United States, like and Alan Watts says, are you familiar with Alan Watts?
No.
Oh my gosh, man, come on, man. You gotta. I mean, first of all, like, so Alan Watts brought Zen to brought a lot of Zen culture to San Francisco. In the beatnik era to the 60s. And he talks a lot about like all the religions, and he talks a lot about when he talks about India. He talks about India and the United States in a sense of, when you get to this state, the awakening or feeling like, or the midlife crisis era, you can, in the United States, there's a lot of like, I'm Jesus Christ. And everybody's like, get the hell out of here. You're a mess. Flow. And they, put you on the pills, right? And you lock you down. Whereas like, you go into India, and this is his saying, if you go to India, you're like, I found God, I'm part of God. The Godhead, you're like, oh, welcome.
Yeah. There is that. That's one of the things I realized in my intense sort of diving into this space, which was it's just been so fun. It's
sure.
Kind of like Jacques Cousteau. He to me, it's people are like, dude, why do you get so excited about this? And
because it's infinite. Like, I mean, it's amazing, right? I mean, how.
It's the intersection of all these worlds. And so, Elon Musk and Richard Branson and, Jeff Bezos, like, I love these guys. They're really forging forward and pioneering, that outer space. Like, let's go out to those frontiers. And I love that. Like, I love Star Trek and all that. And then Jacques Cousteau opened up the frontier of the ocean. Like, within our lifetime, more or less, scuba was invented and opened this whole new world of the ocean for study, for fascination, for wonder, for fun. And to me, consciousness is like my playing field. It's like Jacques Cousteau, you've got ocean. Elon Musk, Richard Branson, you've got space. To me, consciousness is like, wow, it's like the ultimate exploration and fascination, and there's a science and a fun and
Well, I mean, the more there's a whole lot more science coming out, which it accelerates the our ability to translate it for somebody else that we're having a conversation with. Be like, oh, but no, really, the science is here. I don't just feel this way. I'm not the only one. I think the internet has opened up that a lot too. Being able to say, look, I'm not the only one. We've got the safety of the single pane of glass where we can have this conversation and be like, sure, maybe I'm a little terrified to have the conversation, but if I don't have it, I'm gonna explode. Right. Exactly. I'm gonna, if I don't have this conversation, I'm gonna lose it. So, and that was me. That was quite literally me. I remember going through this and reaching out to 3 very close personal friends and just being like, I'm going through this thing. I don't know. And they're like, it's okay. I'm like,
something's going on.
I'm like, really? It's okay. All right. So, and that made it easier, right? Being able to have, so again, so when you went through this, did you have somebody or people that you could kind of have the conversation with that helped it be a little less bumpy for you?
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Yeah. What did that look like?
Well, my wife.
Awesome. Yeah.
I've always been faithful. Always been very connected. Very much attuned to her intuitive side. And humble in knowing where the power really is. So she
with her
number one spotter. Right
on.
That's one
great.
spotter.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny. It's not funny. It's a compliment to her. Is once I got into this stuff and I just kind of like dove straight in and and I had the luxury of being able to just I went to workshops all over the world, and
Nice.
gurus and teachers, and going back to my Catholic school education, it's like, give me all that stuff on Jesus again, and hey, let's go to India, let's go hang out with Thich Nhat Hanh and the Dalai Lama.
Yeah, I saw that. I'm jealous. Definitely jealous of that, man. I'm not
It
gonna
was
lie.
so weird. The
That's
universe just kept like allowing me to do these meet these amazing leaders
for
from
sure.
all space, and so and I got really into this stuff. And
Right.
I remember I was in the garage once with my wife. We were living in France at the time, and I'm so into this stuff. It's like, wow, there's this thing, the law of attraction, and actually, if you practice it, it really works. And
Right.
attention. And I said, honey, I just have to tell you that, like, if you weren't into this stuff, which I'm so into now, like I'm into it as much as rock and roll, which
Right.
I'm really into.
Right.
I said, I'm not sure I could stay with you for more than like 2 or 3 years. Because it's like, it's so everything.
Yeah.
And I'm really grateful, especially because you've waited 30 years for me. And she's like, I knew you'd get it eventually.
Well, you know what? I think I'm a little, a little reverse on that end. Is like, I'm into it, right? I kind of grew up this way a little bit. Like, my mom was an Indian. I didn't have the Indian culture, but I had the kind of like Eastern understanding, right? My mom was a hippie in the 70s, right? So, and like her, like you and your family, like I pushed it all off, right? Like I was like, whatever, dude.
Right.
Right.
You have your own path.
Right. Well, absolutely 100%. And that's the thing that I'm finding, like, with my wife, and like, she's accepting me for going through this and being who and what I am, which is amazing, because I told her, I was like, again, and I was like, I don't know if it's going to get worse before it gets better. She's like, I'm right. She goes, I'm ride or die. I was like, great. But, she's got to go on her own journey, right? Like I can't, and I love it. I love seeing, kind of what her journey is and being a part of her journey, and us just, kind of doing our interweaving, intersecting. Anyways, so, that was just, I was just curious about that, because you don't hear too many people being open about it and sharing it, and sharing it at a high level, right? Like sharing it and going into the places that you're going into. And, one of the things that stands out is you're bringing this into, these companies. How is it helping them? Is it helping these companies?
Oh yeah.
How so?
Okay, we don't talk as woo woo.
Sure.
Doing here,
but you do vision. Like, I mean, you do have people jumping out and saying vision board. You do talk to them at
vision boards, intentionality.
Right, and feeling as if, and I'm not sure
that we teach for sure.
Yeah.
It's one of the most powerful practices.
Right. I mean, so what's the reception been like, and how much is it helping them? Right.
The reception so we started this lifters methodology, which is really around how do we bring these principles, it's conscious leadership practices, how do we bring them into business to solve the big problems that we have as a world. And I see, our mission is to affect business so that they can then affect the planet and all the people that they touch as customers. To me, it's the biggest leverage is to, get this message, these teachings, this methodology, the system, whatever you want to call it, into businesses, because it's the biggest lever for my Archimedes to lift the planet to a place of greater harmony, possibility, and positivity. Right. And so about 3 or 4 years ago, we started this, and there was receptivity at the employee level. Like when I gave keynotes or my TEDx talk, people were like, yeah, I'm a lifter. Finally, someone understands us millennials. We want purpose, and all these things. Yet the businesses about 3-4 years ago, there were fewer businesses who are willing to, kind of take the leap. Or invest in it at the level that they're now doing, because they realize, because the world's moved so fast in just a few years. So now what we are finding is that more and more companies, many companies are realizing that they must treat their people as whole people. because they're seeing the costs around productivity, engagement, absenteeism, presenteeism, workplace conflict, lack of innovation, lack of customer trust, et cetera. And there's this huge pressure on companies. So now what they're seeing is that the tangible benefits of lifter leadership, e.g. conscious leadership, that's about positivity, purpose, authenticity, helping people find that creative aspect of who they are and express it, compassion, that these aren't separate nice to haves that you check off. They're actually the lever to be more innovative, have your workers be more engaged, build more trust and loyalty, have greater workplace well-being and harmony, and be socially responsible. And they're getting pressure from the outside. So now they're waking up like, just in no time, because they're seeing the benefits of it. And there's been a lot of research around, these various aspects of conscious leadership, positivity, empathy in the workplace, inclusion, and, its effect on, innovation, top line, bottom line, and things like that. So that is now speaking to the linear mind. So while the heart intuitive aspect within an executive that would have the decision-making power to bring this to their frontline workers or to their C-suite, while their heart would have spoken to them around that, and while they're, they may be, people of some sort of faith that really believes, teaching their kids to be good, to, pay it forward. It's about service, about making a difference. Yet there was that other linear side that wasn't satisfied. And I get that because I was there.
Right.
I don't know. It's nice out here, but it's all about the bottom line, and you got to work hard or you don't get anywhere. And it's about competition. Now what we're finding is there's enough empirical data around the benefits of things like lifter leadership or conscious leadership. There's been publications. There's a Harvard Business Review article that makes the case that consciously led companies that employ practices, like lifter leadership or some of the other practices out there, perform 10.5 times better than their peers. Now, 10.5 times, not percent.
Right.
So that's wake up, holy cow.
Right.
And so now the benefits are speaking to the left brain, to that linear side. And so we're able to, again, bring those pieces together. And now people are like racing to be the pioneers.
Sure.
Because there tends to be a lemming mentality around this as well. Mindfulness is really, being proven to drive productivity, innovation, less workplace conflict, engagement, things like that. So just like you and I are finding the worlds came together,
right.
Businesses are finding it's coming together, and they're actually seeing that, things like worker engagement, being able to attract talent and motivate talent to be creative and be, very customer centric and find solutions in real time. Those things only work when you offer things like lifter leadership, where you provide, this talent a purpose that they believe in that's bigger than the bottom line. Because otherwise,
for sure. I think you're hitting on a big thing there too, right? When you you bring in the talent, you bring in these humans, and you've got them all in there. You bring these things in, but to get them to see the bigger picture, or maybe, where I'm at right now, I'm at Keller Williams, and one of the things they do with you there is they do this career visioning with you, right? And I loved it. And so it's like, let's talk about like this career visioning, and what do you want out of your life, and how can I, as a leader, help you to get what you want out of your life? And how does that plug into, kind of what I'm doing, right? Like, obviously it's got to plug into the company or somewhere, or like you talk about, like, how can you take someone who, has a love of guitars and, surfing and is also, mathematically inclined, and bring that into the work that they do, right? How can you?
It's so fun to be able to bring your stuff together in a unique way. And I'm a case study of that. I'm a freakish case study of that to myself and my non-believing self from, maybe a decade or more ago.
Right.
And it's really about breaking down those walls. We talk about lifters really tapping into their yes and gifts and qualities and skills, and seeing the yes ands in others. Because if you can bring your different aspects of who you are to a job, that's a unique contribution that no one else can make. If you're a barista and a poet, somehow bring it, bring
Barista poetry night. I mean, come on, right? So I think the other thing what you're helping these companies do, and you can tell me if I'm right or wrong, you're giving them the ability to bring people in and nurture these other to self-expression, full realization within a company towards the greater good. And when you're doing that with another company, those people are engaged.
They're so engaged. They love it because there's something that hang their energy on, because we see a lot of, we do a lot of workshops for clients around innovation, team building, things like that. Depending on the culture of the company, having like a point solution to things like inclusion or diversity or innovation without addressing that the underlying foundation of what's going on with these individuals can often have fleeting results, because how creative is someone going to be, even if you have like a super whiz-bang innovation workshop where you generate all these great ideas and people feel that they're really listened to and all kinds of great sparks are flying and you come out with all these great ideas. If they go back to work and they are treated in a non-inclusive way, if someone's leading them in some sort of militaristic, old, live in the box model, they're not heard, then it's just going to fall flat. And so what our clients are finding is that this is a systematic way to address any of these problems, or all of them, depending on what their priorities are. And when people get so excited, simply the word lifters changes people's lives, because I've had so many people, I can't tell you, Brendan, I get emails out of the blue, and they often come on like crappy days where, you wake up and go, what am I doing? Am I really you have those days. There's
no surfing today. I got to stay in bed.
Oh, exactly. It's crappy and it's crappy. And I'll get, I get emails from people all over the world, and they're like, Mr. Shah, I heard your talk, and I want you to know you saved my life.
I love that.
I'm like,
yes. How great is that? How great is that?
I believe that the lifters message, which is not mine, I'm just a vessel for it. Our team helps us deliver it and makes me.
Paresh, I'm going to interject right there. I love it, right? Because there's, who's the guy? I can't remember his name. Look, there's no new messages. There's just new messengers, right? So, I mean, you're speaking your truth to anybody who will listen, and there's only going to be a select few that are actually going to hear it.
More and more people are hearing it. And exactly. And it's the same old truth. It's the same ageless truth. And now we're able to speak to that truth in ways that resonate with that logical, business, financial mind that wants to grow, wants to make money, wants to innovate, wants to retain workers, and bring that. And so you can see it's almost like some sort of like mega galactic, power station where you've got all this energy around, the excitement of business. And, I love competing. I love winning. Don't get me wrong.
Sure. Yes, sir.
There are ways to take that energy, that hunter energy, that killer energy, and, actually redeploy it in a way that still is very satisfying to people who want to win without having to beat other people down. So there's all that great energy of the sport of business and the thrill of business, and how business can affect the planet in, monstrous ways for the better if they, align and attune to it. And then we've got all of this kind of spiritual, faithful, metaphysical energy, which has its own infinitude to it. Right. When you bring these two together in someone's mind, I know when I give keynotes, like, it's a thrill. I'm surprised people pay me because I'm watching people's heads explode.
Yeah, sure.
I'm watching popcorn pop when people go, oh my God, I'm a lifter.
Sure.
Or, holy cow, that's what I've been feeling all along. And now there's a legitimate place for what I believed in, what I've been taught by my parents, what I've been taught by, good people.
Sure.
There's a place for that in my work setting. And for me, it's just like watching fireworks go off, which, as you know, as someone who's born on the 4th of July, is my favorite sport.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I love how you did that. So I think you mentioned it in one of the other ones is bringing yourself into the job and being able to be who you are. And and I translated it in my mind and I've been saying this for a couple of years, bringing life to work, right? Breathing life into work. Like, and I likened it to like, God breathing life into the rib of Adam. I'm like, oh my God, you know what? All he was really doing was like taking his work and breathing life into it, right? Like in creating this moment. My work can totally suck. And I can look at it that way and be like, today all I did was click on the keyboard. Or today what I did was I touched hundreds of lives when I was working at Cisco. And I had that mentality for a little bit. I'd be like, oh, all today I'm doing is clicking on the keyboard, pressing buttons, nanu. And I was like, and then I was like, oh no, you know what I'm really doing is like, I'm powering the internet today.
That's right.
Everybody like, there's like all the bits and pieces that are flying across the network of the world today. I participated in that, right? So I can go from nanu, click, to being this all powerful being of right. Bringing this to the world today. Absolutely. And this is what the word conscious means to me, your conscious choice of who and how you show up in the world as today. It's not when people talk about like conscience, like, way of being, they're like, oh yeah, you're just some hippie flipped out dude. No, you are making purposeful, intentional decisions.
Exactly.
And empowering yourself.
Exactly. And in fact, we've explored what the subtitle of our book is, which my business partner / wife Eliza and I are writing, and we played around with it. And one of the things that she actually proposed early on, which I really see the power of it, is the current sort of subheading of the book, Lifters, is everyday evolved leaders who uplift their coworkers, their customers, their community, and their company, ... on purpose.
For sure.
That on purpose aspect of being a lifter. I mean, there are people who are lifters who are like, who will, be positive and be a little spark in someone's life. A lifter is someone who, on purpose, consciously, maybe not 100% of the time, because we are humans and we live in this 3D world sometimes, on purpose and consciously go, okay, how can I show up in this meeting, in this conflict? How can I show up for this other coworker? How can I show up for this irate customer who clearly has been screwed in some way out of what their dream was, whether it's a vacation that didn't come through or whatever? And how can I, really show up for that person choicefully in a way that's uplifting for them? And there are practices and mind shifts that we teach that can very easily and simply alchemize the old algorithms of how to respond to people into the new lifter way of doing things. And it's really, I love what you say. It's about, breathing life into your work. One of the workshops that my wife is coined and she's fantastic at is called Love Your Job, Like It or Not.
Well, yeah, that's the thing that you, again, this boils back down to, it's your choice, right? Exactly. How do you want to see it? You can see it. You can see it as crappy, and that is crappy.
Exactly.
It's crappy. You got a crappy job. You know why? Because you told everybody it's crappy, because that's how you see it.
And if you see yourself as undeserved of that, if you see yourself as the victim who always ends up with crappy jobs,
you're going to keep getting them.
that's just going to serve up multiplied for you.
Well, listen, we go to the whole law of attraction thing, and I love the idea of the torus field, right? Like, I mean, the small amount that comes out is just big and goes and it comes back again. So, look, I mean, all kinds of awesome stuff. I could probably talk to you for like a week on end, but I don't want to keep you for too long. I want to jump on one of the things I heard you share that I really enjoyed. The 4 C's. You want to throw those out there for everybody for me?
Sure, you bet. So we have 4 mind shifts to be a lifter, which are serve up. So it's about service, not hunting. It's about listen up. How do we really be listeners, and how do we go deep within ourselves and tune into our intuitive self and our body awareness so that we can express ourselves and be understood and understand each other's, especially customers. The third one is show up with our yes and qualities. How do we show up with all of who we are? a business lover I am, a leadership lover I am, a dad, a musician, a beginning surfer, and then the fourth one is act up. How do we actually take action so that we can, make a difference in our world, in our workplace, for our company, for our community? So we have various practices that help us embody these new ways of being that are more aligned with what we need today in this world to be successful as entrepreneurs, small businesses or larger companies. So one of them we call being positive on purpose. And people are like, well, is it just about having a howdy doody face all day, Paresh? It's like, well, no, it's not necessarily that. And a very simple practice that, and again, this isn't ours. This is all, all truth is out there. It's just about how do we, convey it. A very simple practice that will make your life better today, at work, at home, at school, whatever you're doing, is if you very deliberately watched yourself and avoided the following 4 C's, which are to compare, compete, complain, or criticize yourself or others, to yourself, even in your own mind, or others. And I mean, maybe in your own mind's a harder one, and so we'll give you a pass on that one. But basically, the 4 C's to avoid, if you want to be, a lot of people talk about being atmosphere shifters, like lifters shift the weather around them. Like you want to be around the lifter, you just feel better. And frankly, it is vibration, it's energy, it's frequencies, and it's quantum physics. Gratitude is a different frequency state than despair or loneliness or hatred or anger. And
even saying those words are low vibration words. Like your whole tone, body, and feel shifts when you, I mean, I hear, and anybody listening to the audio is going to feel just how different and the down tone and feel that they're going to feel just feeling those words.
It's embedded in the meaning of it. And so when we speak of gratitude and joy and peace and wonder, that actually uplifts your vibration, uplifts your frequency. And as we all know from physics, no one's arguing this anymore, thank God. We are energy fields. We're not solid matter, even though it looks like it. We are energy fields that appear due to density and due to our sensors as having solid form. Our energy fields actually shift, and they shift the environment of everyone around us. And some would argue the entire planet. And so, lifters lift that atmosphere around each other. And a simple way of doing that is, you started off this talk with, what are some of the things we're going to drop or just let go as we move into this, this new world that we've just shifted into in the past year, is we're going to drop the 4 C's. We're going to not compare, complain, criticize. Well, start all over. We're not going to compare, compete, complain, or criticize others or ourselves, to others or to ourselves. And I guarantee you, your life will shift if you employ that. Because in today's world, particularly with the news, particularly with social media, we are being baited, hooked, tempted, lured, bribed into getting into a conversation about comparing ourselves, competing, making others wrong, criticizing other people, etc. And that is low vibrational state beingness, and we will suffer. You will suffer. What we recommend, if you want to replace those 4 C's, is with the 4 lifter P's, which if you're going to say something, rather than compare, compete, complain, or criticize, say something that's positive, purposeful, playful, or peaceful. In other words, don't say anything at all. And that will actually change your biology, your emotional state, your psychological state, and the state of your relationships. And watch the type of people that show up in your orbit, in your vortex, when you employ the 4 P's in your world versus the 4 C's. It's a whole different world of people that will just show up. I meet very few jerks. I won't cuss on this. I meet very few jerks anymore, which is weird. I remember early in my journey, I came home one day and I was telling my wife, yeah, I bumped into so-and-so today and they were amazing. And, you know, we had all these similarities and we knew so-and-so, and I bumped into this other person and they're exactly what, you know, we were looking for,
right.
you know, and I said, it's kind of weird how I keep bumping into all these cool people. And I don't have any of these jerks, we'll call them, show up in my life.
Right.
And, one of the things she reminded me of, which, and actually it was that day I actually got the message. She goes, well, you know of the law of attraction, Paresh. Well, you know, there's also the law of repulsion. Those people, they're not showing up in your orbit. Like your vibe, just like the other people show up
Right.
through the innate vibration that you're putting out there.
Right.
The others, they run for the hills. Like they're somehow just not going to be directed to you.
Sure.
So it's not a coincidence.
I love it. I mean, and that's you know, it's amazing when, I mean, because I was just gonna say, I mean, you just start to expect it, right? You're able to see, like, I was expecting that to happen in my day, and it did, and that's just, it's eerie. What else can I do, right? What else can I create in my life?
It's the greatest attitude. It's the greatest feeling, and those are the greatest days. And there are days where, you know, there's like streaks of days or sometimes weeks. And I remember even a few years ago when we started experiencing what we would call the miraculous in the 3D world, and you're like, oh my God, I wanted it. It showed up. I wanted that showed up. I didn't even think of that, but boy, that answers 10 of my questions at once. And we start acknowledging and recognizing, you know, things that are, quote, out of the ordinary, rational, statistical, probabilistic way of things showing up. And, you know, miraculous, we might call it a demonstration. We call it a God incident sometimes. And I remember being so excited, like, about like the 10 miracles that, you know, I experience in a day, where I'd be like, how cool would it be if one day it's so prevalent that when it doesn't work that way, you're like, huh, isn't that weird? Just like miracles today, we point out. And I have lived those days. I've lived those days with my friends. I strive to live in those days. And those days are a promise, actually, from every, you know, truth, faith out there, that those days, whether you call it heaven, nirvana, the kingdom, you know, kailasa, it's all the same. It's a state of being, a state of consciousness, where it's actually a new reality that unfolds. And it's cool how so quickly, in a matter of a couple of years, I have friends who are like, yeah, I mean, when it doesn't happen, I'm just like, huh, that's kind of weird. And so the fact that we can shift our reality in such a fundamental way in a matter of, you know, years or a decade or so as beings is really miraculous in and of itself, to see the world from an entirely different perspective, where, you know, when the non-ordinary doesn't happen, or when the miraculous or the, you know, unexpected doesn't happen and the mundane happens, you go, huh, maybe I need to like tweak how I'm seeing the world. Maybe there's something within me that needs a little fine-tune adjustment.
Well, for sure, you go back in your mind, you're like, did I compare yesterday? Did I compete yesterday? Did I criticize or complain? What happened, right? How did I make this happen? Because you ultimately, as long as you take full responsibility for your entire life, you've got to look at what you've done. You know, what did I do to create this moment, right?
Well, how did I think about it myself within my own kind of inner space? Do I have self-doubt? Do I have some sort of self-hatred? Do I have some sort of denial that is saying, you know what, you're not deserving of this? One of the things that we really find with lifters is you know, people who are inherently lifters, anyone can learn to be a lifter. A lot of people want to be lifters. They just haven't learned how, because they've grown up in, you know, companies and organizations that said, you know, this is how you succeed. You know, you work hard and you treat people like this, and et cetera. And one of the things that we've, you know, really found is, you know, such a receptivity to kind of recognizing that people who are inherently lifters, they tend to be givers, because lifters are about service. one of the common themes is lack of self-compassion and empathy for self. We do work in the healthcare industry, and we have amazing people like nurses who are giving so much of their heart. And as we, talk with them and work with them, the number one thing that, they need, I remember I had a client that was, doesn't work in the nursing space. And she goes, let's talk about what we might need, Paresh, from your organization to help us. And I said, I'd love to, hear what you're saying and get your perspective. I'll bet you anything that ultimately it's going to come down to compassion for self-care. And she's like, oh my God. And then she went off. And so people who are givers, who are lifters, often need to kind of listen to that inner voice around deservedness, around ability to allow, to accept help, to take care of themselves because they're so busy taking care of others.
Would you say
that might be that adjustment we talk about? They go, hey, how come that didn't work out? Well, it might have been your inner voice saying, no, you don't deserve that.
Being willing to receive.
Huge.
Right. I mean, and look, I've definitely had issues with that. And somebody had to point it out to me, right? Like, oh, I want to give, but don't you like receiving too? I'm like, yeah, but I can't run around telling everybody I like to receive because I'm like, I look greedy and I can't have all these things. It's like, but in order to be a full conduit, right? The full voltage has got to go through whatever, something like that.
It is. It's that toroid. And I am learning. One of my practices is to learn to receive. And the other thing I'm practicing is asking for help. One of my current practices is asking for help, because I tended to be someone who could kind of, go on.
Well, that's the Western mentality, right? You're a cowboy, brother. You're a cowboy. Right? You're going to yippee-ki-yay, and you're going to speak
country. I'm young, scrappy, and hungry.
All right, I got one more thing I'm going to hit on, and then I'm going to let you go because, again, I've listened to so many things, and one thing that I hear you keep calling out is giving some power to the millennials in a good way. I want to throw this out at you and see what your thoughts are on this. People that are talking about millennials being job hoppers or this, that, the other thing, maybe they just recognize their value.
Yes, and yes,
right?
And it's a whole new world.
Right.
I really, think that the criticism that the younger generations take, millennials, X, Y, Z, most of it is misplaced. First of all, every generation thinks the next generation is like, kids today. And I remember my dad, he was like, kids today, they're watching TV all day and doing their head banging to rock and roll. And, we had 12 channels. And we had to get up to turn them. So every generation has its beef with the former generation. And that's just sort of, inherent. I hope that would stop one day. I actually revere this current generation because they're far more highly dimensional beings. Right. They're far more tuned into the woo-woo stuff that we're talking about. They're very much aligned with making a difference and having a purpose. So, when people malign or criticize the younger generation of folks for, being disengaged or, job hoppers or lazy or entitled, and which, factually, 7 out of 10 workers today are classified as disengaged by the Society of Human Resources Management. So, that's a horrific statistic to look around you and go, wow, 7 out of 10 of us, 7 out of 10 of the people here, don't give a bleep. Right. And the other 3 of us have got to do all the work for them, which is really a lot of pressure on the ones who actually are showing up to make a difference in their job, to give all of themselves. And so while that's true, the causality is not because they're young or millennials or X, Y, Z. What we argue is we are leading these people with old, arcane, outdated, militaristic origined management practices, which are not relevant to this generation. They don't respond to it. And it's basically, not working. It's like, you know, using a typewriter when, you know, you've got voice recognition today.
Right.
And so what we help our clients understand is that, you know, stop complaining about the millennials or comparing them to a former generation or criticizing them
Right.
for, you know, not working extra hours. Lead them as lifters, as
Right.
lifter leaders,
Right.
and watch what happens. Because if you give this younger generation a purpose that they can really believe in,
Right.
you allow them to make a difference and show up in some creative way where they can self-express at
Right.
work, and don't box them in.
Right.
You know, these folks will walk on fire for you.
For sure.
Like, money is not such the thing for them. They actually want to make a
right.
difference.
Which
So
is awesome.
They're
Right.
so much more aligned. So it's not that they are or are not lazy, job hoppers, etc. It's what's causing that. What is the root cause? As a scientist or as an engineer, you go, well, let's go to the fishbone, and what's the root cause? The root cause is we're leading people in a way that doesn't align with their beingness, with their call into life, with the way that they have been raised, and actually with the way things should be, which is about making a difference, about having compassion, about creativity, about cooperation. And when we align those things in our way of relating to our workers, whether they be frontline workers or executive suite, I mean, magic happens. I mean, they're world-changing individuals, and it's amazing things.
It's a much more normal state of being, and it feels good. So, you know, when people feel good, I think they're going to do good work. And you talked a little bit earlier, you know, if they're under pressure, if they're competing, if they're in all these states and they're not engaged, you're not going to get their best work. If people's minds are in survival mode, they're constricted. They're not, you know, so that's, look, man, I'm going to end it there with you. And I really appreciate you popping on, taking the time. Where should I send people to go find out more about you and what it is that you're doing today?
You can come to iamalifter.com. I am, important words, alifter.com. And yeah, we've got a little spot on there if you'd like to share your story about being a lifter, or maybe a lifter who made a difference in your life, or if you'd like to somehow get involved. We have our book coming out soon, and we can give you a heads up on that, maybe give you some excerpts before it hits the bookstores.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So absolutely, if we can be of service to anyone out there, you know, just, and let me, you know, make one point that I sometimes is overlooked. You talked earlier, Brendan, about not labeling people. Okay? And a lot of what lifter leadership is about not othering people, and like finding that unity, consciousness, using tension between people. It might be finance and marketing. It might be, you know, young and old. It might be this gender versus that gender. It might be, you know, a racial thing or whatever. Let's use the tensions and the skills of these people and the opposing tension to actually catapult to new levels of understanding, innovation, and engagement. Because we can do that. We actually have ways of doing that, which is really cool, to use those differences and the tension to then unify towards a greater solution that works for everyone. And in that regard, this whole labeling thing, you know, we must, you know, stop labeling if we can. It's kind of inherent in the way our fight or flight and our pattern recognition brains were developed when we needed to survive. You know, it's like lion, run. You know, it's not that you are or are not a lifter, because that then creates another class of people. Well, we're lifters and you're not. That is definitely not the message. A lifter is not a matter of who you are or are not. It's how do you show up in the moment? Are you being a lifter in this moment? Because sometimes you might be a downer. I'm a downer sometimes, you know. Ask my kids.
Right. Sure.
So it's really, how do you show up? And lifters, using the words we spoke of earlier, purposefully, consciously, as a practice, aim to embody these lifter principles of serving up, listening up, showing up, and acting up in a way that uplifts their coworkers, their customers, their community, and therefore their company gets uplifted. It's really cool because it happens as a consequence rather than, as something you do after the fact, which is, our company succeeded, therefore let's make a difference in our community, or let's give our, employees a bonus and make them feel good. No, it's the other way around. When you uplift your workers, your teams, your talent, and your customers, and make a difference in the world, customers will buy. For today's customers, which are also those same XYZs we're talking about, they expect this from companies. They expect companies to employ this type of leadership, this sort of lifter, positive, compassionate leadership. They expect companies to be sustainable. Otherwise, they're going to vote with their dollars.
Well, yeah, I think they vote with their dollars, and again, with their showing up to work, right? Like, I mean, with both their dollars, they want a company that's giving those things, and they want to work for companies that are giving those things, right? I mean, they want to be a part of this intentional movement, So, again, I love it. Thanks for taking the time, guys. Get over to I Am a Lifter. They've got some. Yeah, you guys have some, you've got some other diagnostics you can take over there. There's plenty of other podcasts that if you didn't like this one, I don't know what's wrong with you, but if you didn't like this one, you can go over to his site and take a listen to some of the other ones that are on there. I think they're all good. They all have a little bit of something in there that you're going to enjoy. So that's it.
I will end with how we started.
Namaste.
Is namaste. And it comes back to what we were speaking of before. How did you describe your understanding of namaste?
I salute the divinity within.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I salute to the divinity within you. The divinity in me bows to the divinity in you. And that gets back to the point around some of the adjustment between, some of the Western thinking, some of the Eastern thinking, where it's a little more permission to say, you know what, you are divinity. And I am divinity. We're aspects of divinity,
for sure,
bowing to each other's divinity. And it's a little more permissioned in certain parts of the world to acknowledge and speak to that versus, being seen as someone who feels they're above anyone else in that regard.
Yeah, nobody's above anybody else, but there's got to be the recognition of just how great you are.
Everyone is great. Everyone is great. We are amazing creations. And so I really appreciate all you're doing to help people understand more, share, and really you're a lifter.
And remember, reach out to us on Facebook or through our webpage. The Prosperity Practice. The Prosperity Practice. Have something to say directly? Hit us up, Brandon at prosperity-practice.com. Prosperity is a result of action. Take action.
That's it. I'm out of here.